My husband said killing me would be kinder than dragging me through the desert. So he left me. No food, no water, just a whisper to the others that I wouldn't last the night. But I crawled through heat that peeled skin from bone, drank from snake tracks, and followed the ghost of a woman he thought he'd forgotten. Now we're both back, and we remember everything. They say confession's good for the soul, but I don't know if I've got one left to save. I don't even know why I'm telling this. Maybe because the silence got too loud. Maybe because if I don't say it now, it'll eat what's left of me from the inside out. So here it is. The truth from the night my husband looked me in the eye and decided I was less valuable than a broken wagon wheel. To the day I came back, dragging something colder than death behind me. It started like a cancer, that betrayal. A whisper in the dark that grew into a roar. We were heading west, me and William, part of Sattler's wagon train, chasing that fool's dream of a new life out beyond the mountains. A fresh start, Julia, he'd said, his eyes shining. A fresh start. Looking back, it's a bitter laugh, ain't it? How quickly dreams can turn to ash in your mouth. The journey. God, it was brutal. Like the land itself was trying to chew us up and spit us out. We lost people. Sickness, accidents, sheer bloody-minded cruelty of the elements. Our supplies got low, and hope got even lower. I remember one night, pretending to be asleep, curled up under our one thin blanket, the chill seeping into my bones. That's when I heard William talking to Sattler, the man who fancied himself our leader. William's voice, usually so bluff and hearty, was low and conspiratorial. "She's weak, Sattler," he said, and every word was a nail in my coffin. My William. Talking about me. We can't afford to carry dead weight. Not anymore. Dead weight. That's what I'd become. My breath caught, a painful lump in my throat. I lay there, frozen, listening to my own death sentence being passed. Sattler's voice, rough as a rusty file, came back. "She's your wife, William. Your woman." There was a pause. A long, terrible silence that stretched out, pressing down on me like the lid of a coffin. Then William spoke again, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion I could recognize. "She won't survive this way. Not for long. It's kinder, really. We do it clean. No suffering. No suffering. For who, William? For you, the man I'd loved, the man who'd sworn vows before God to cherish and protect me, had just signed my death warrant. They were going to leave me to die in this God-forsaken wilderness. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. The next morning, I woke to a silence that screamed. The wagons, the sounds of the camp stirring, all gone. Just an empty, echoing stillness. I stumbled out of our pathetic lean-to, my heart hammering against my ribs. Gone. They were all gone. I screamed then, a raw, tearing sound ripped from my throat until it burned. I ran through the deserted camp, the cracked, sun-baked earth scraping my bare feet raw. They'd left me with nothing. Not a scrap of food, not a drop of water. Just the filthy, tattered dress on my back and the horrifying, gut-wrenching knowledge that I was going to die. Alone. But I didn't die, Sheriff. Not then. Some stubborn, spiteful spark deep inside me refused to be snuffed out. I walked. For days, it felt like. Or maybe it was weeks. Time just dissolved. The sun was a relentless enemy, beating down, baking my skin, cracking my lips until they bled. The desert stretched on forever in every direction, a vast, empty canvas mocking my tiny, desperate struggle. Hunger gnawed at my belly, a constant, cramping pain. Thirst was a fire in my throat. I started seeing things. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, morphing into grotesque shapes. Were they real? Or was my mind finally snapping like a dry twig? I didn't know. I didn't care. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. I think it was the fourth night, or maybe the fifth, who can say. when I finally collapsed. My body just gave out. No more fight left. I lay there on the cold sand, the grit scraping my cheek, my breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. This was it, I thought. This is where my story ends, my bones bleaching under the uncaring sun. William's clean solution. Then, through the haze of approaching death, I heard it. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, crunching on the dry ground. A figure loomed over me, a dark silhouette against the pale, rising moon. I tried to lift my head, to see who it was, but the world tilted and spun, a nauseating vortex, and then nothing. Just blessed, silent darkness. When I opened my eyes again, the desert was gone. I was lying on something soft, a thick buffalo hide, and warmth. Oh, sweet heaven, the warmth. It seeped into my frozen limbs like a miracle. The air smelled of wood smoke, and something else, earthy and unfamiliar, pungent, but not unpleasant. My fingers curled against the fur beneath me. I forced my heavy eyelids open. I was inside a dwelling of some kind, roughly built, but sturdy. Animal hides lined the walls, and a small fire crackled nearby, its light casting flickering shadows. I tried to sit up, but a blinding pain shot through my ribs, and I gasped, sucking in a sharp breath. "You should not move yet." The voice was deep, calm, masculine. It seemed to come from the shadows near the fire. I turned my head, wincing. A man sat there, his dark eyes watching me with an unnerving intensity. He was striking. Not handsome in the way William had been, all smiles and easy charm. This man was carved from the land itself. Strong, his skin bronzed by the sun, his long black hair tied back from a face that held no easy smiles. He wore clothes unlike any I'd ever seen, fringed leather adorned with intricate beadwork and strange markings. An Indian, I realized with a jolt. Though Indian felt like a white man's clumsy word for something far more complex. My voice was a dry, raspy whisper when I finally managed to speak. You found me?" He gave a slow nod, his gaze never leaving my face. "You were dying." I swallowed, the effort painful in my raw throat. Why did you save me?" It was a stupid question, I suppose. Why does anyone save anyone? But I had to know. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, as if weighing me, measuring something I couldn't see. Then, his voice low and steady, he said, "Because the spirits do not wish you dead. Not yet." Spirits. A shiver, entirely unrelated to the cold, traced its way down my spine. I was alive because of this stranger, this warrior. He could have left me there. Most men would have. God knows my own husband had. But he hadn't. He'd brought me here, tended to me. But that question still echoed in the back of my mind, a persistent, uneasy hum. Why? The fire crackled softly, a small comfort in the strange, quiet dwelling. But the chill I felt wasn't something a fire could touch. The stranger, he told me his name was Tasso, though later I learned some settlers had called him Matthew when he was younger, before things happened that pushed him away from their world, sat across from me. He was sharpening a long, wicked-looking blade with slow, deliberate movements, the rhythmic rasp of stone on steel filling the silence. His dark eyes, unreadable as a deep well, flickered up to meet mine from time to time. Patient, watchful. "Where am I?" I finally managed, my voice still hoarse. "My home," he replied simply, not pausing in his task. My fingers curled into the soft fur beneath me. "And who are you, really?" He stopped his sharpening then. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken things. "Tasso," he said again, as if the name itself should be enough. It felt foreign on my tongue, a word from a world I didn't understand. Yet, Strangely, I felt no immediate threat from him. If he'd meant me harm, he'd have left me to the coyotes and the sun. I swallowed hard. You said, the spirits. They didn't want me dead. What does that mean? Tasso looked at me then, a long, searching look, as if he could see right through my bruised and battered flesh, into the very marrow of my fear. You are still breathing, he said, his voice flat. That is reason enough for them. His answer raised more questions than it answered, but I was too weak, too utterly exhausted to press him further. My body ached with a bone-deep weariness. My limbs felt like lead. Sleep, heavy and insistent, tugged at my consciousness. Rest, he said, as if sensing my fading strength. His voice, for the first time, held a hint of something softer, almost gentle. You are safe here. Safe. The word felt like a fragile piece of glass, something that could shatter with the slightest pressure. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Sheriff, I let myself believe it. I closed my eyes and surrendered to the darkness, a darkness that, for once, felt like a refuge. I woke suddenly, my heart pounding. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, casting long, eerie shadows that writhed and danced on the hide-lined walls. The dwelling was silent, deathly silent, save for the distant, mournful howl of the wind outside. I lay still for a moment, listening, every nerve ending screaming a silent alarm. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. My skin felt cold. Then I heard it. A faint, stealthy shuffling sound. Not from outside. No, this was inside the dwelling. With me. My breath hitched in my throat, a strangled little gasp. Slowly, ever so slowly, I turned my head towards the dying fire. Tasso was still there, sitting cross-legged, his eyes closed, his breathing deep and even. Asleep, or perhaps in some deep meditation. But just beyond him, lurking in the deepest, darkest shadows of the room, something moved. A shape. A figure. It was too dark to make out any features, but I knew, Sheriff. I knew with a sickening, gut-twisting certainty that it was watching me. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I wanted to scream, to cry out to Tasso, to wake him. But fear, cold and paralyzing, had rooted me to the spot. It felt as if unseen hands were pressing down on my chest, stealing my breath, crushing the life out of me. The figure shifted. It took a step forward, just enough for the faint, flickering orange glow of the embers to catch it. A woman. Her hair was long, dark, and matted, like a crow's nest. Her face was gaunt, skeletal, her eyes... God, her eyes were just hollow, black pits of utter despair. She wore a tattered, filthy dress, a dress that looked chillingly, horrifyingly similar to the one I'd been wearing when William and Sattler had left me for dead. Her lips moved, forming silent, ghostly words. And then, without any warning, she lunged. I gasped, my body jerking upright, a strangled scream tearing from my throat. The dwelling was suddenly bright again, the fire inexplicably roaring back to life, its flames leaping high, illuminating every nook and cranny. There was no figure, no spectral woman. Just Tasso, his eyes wide open now, staring at me with that same quiet, unnerving intensity. You saw her, he said, his voice flat. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of fact. I clutched the buffalo hide to my chest, my breath still coming in ragged, painful sobs. Who was she? Tasso's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek. He looked away from me, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. For a long, agonizing moment he said nothing. Then, so low I almost didn't hear him, he murmured, "You are not the first." A chill, colder than any desert night, colder than the touch of death itself, snaked down my spine. The first... What? His eyes, when they finally met mine again, were dark pools of sorrow, reflecting an ancient, weary pain. The first woman left to die in that wasteland. The weight of his words settled over me, heavy and suffocating. I'd survived William's betrayal, Sattler's callousness, the cruel indifference of the desert. I'd even cheated death, it seemed. But this was something else entirely, something ancient and malevolent. Something that promised a horror far worse than a lonely death under the sun. What do you mean? I managed to choke out, my voice trembling. Tasso moved to the fire, adding another dry log. The flames licked at it hungrily, greedily, casting his strong features into stark relief. His silence was a torment, stretching my already frayed nerves to the breaking point. There have been others, he said at last, his voice quieter now, imbued with a deep sadness. Women abandoned, discarded, left to the mercy of the scavengers and the sun, by men like your husband. Men like William. The words were like a brand on my heart. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms. The memory of William's voice, so casual as he discussed my demise, echoed in my mind, stoking a cold, hard rage deep in my belly. The ones who see women as burdens, Tasso continued, his voice hardening, a flinty edge creeping in. As disposable, who choose their own miserable survival over loyalty, over love, over basic human decency. And the woman? I asked, my throat tight. The one I saw? Who was she? A flicker of something distant, something haunted, crossed Tasso's usually stoic face. She was one of them, he said, his voice barely a whisper, left behind, just like you. My skin prickled with a cold, crawling dread. And now? What is she now? Tasso didn't answer immediately. He seemed to be choosing his words with great care. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, deliberate. She lingers. Lingers. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and ominous, like a storm cloud about to burst. I'd spent days teetering on the very edge of oblivion, Sheriff. But this was a different kind of abyss. Why? I whispered, the question torn from me. Tasso's jaw tightened, the lines around his mouth deepening. Because she was not ready to go. The fire crackled loudly then, as if underscoring his words, filling the heavy silence that had fallen between us. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. I don't believe in ghosts, I muttered, though even to my own ears the words lacked any real conviction. How could they? I knew what I'd seen. That woman, the way she'd moved, the silent, desperate words her lips had formed. That was no mere trick of the firelight, no figment of an exhausted mind. Tasso's gaze was steady, unwavering. It does not matter if you believe, Julia. She is real. She came to me, I murmured, the awful realization dawning, settling like a stone in my gut. He nodded slowly. She will come again. The fire crackled louder still, almost as if in response, a sentient thing in the room with us. Why me? I asked, my voice barely more than a breath. I was afraid of the answer, Sheriff. Deep down, in that secret, terrified part of myself, I think I already knew. Tasso stood then, moving with a quiet grace to a rough-hewn shelf on the far wall. He took down a small, worn leather pouch, shaking its contents into his calloused palm. A handful of dried herbs, dark and crumbling, fell into his fingers. She sees herself in you, he said, his voice devoid of inflection. She feels your betrayal, your pain, and she wants something. My breath caught in my throat, a knot of ice forming there. What does she want? He looked at me then, his dark eyes holding mine, his gaze so intense it felt like he could see right into the darkest corners of my soul. Revenge, he said, the single word dropping into the silence like a stone into a deep, dark well. Revenge. The word sent a cold, terrifying shudder through my bones. Revenge on who? The question formed in my mind, but I already knew the answer. My heart seemed to slow, as if the weight of his words had physically pressed against my chest. William. Sattler. The men who had ridden away without a second glance, the men who had left me for dead, consigned me to a hellish end. A part of me, a small, desperate, naive part, still wanted to believe that this was all just a terrible, waking nightmare. That I would blink and find myself back in the wagon, William shaking me gently, telling me I'd just had a bad dream. But I knew better. I had seen the woman. I had felt her rage, her despair. And now, Tasso was telling me I was being dragged into her unfinished bloody business. He sprinkled the dried herbs into the fire. Immediately, the flames flared high, the orange and yellow turning a deep, unnatural, mesmerizing blue. The scent that filled the small dwelling was sharp and earthy, like rain-soaked wood and something else, something metallic, like old blood. I watched, transfixed, as the fire seemed to move with a life of its own, twisting and shifting in ways that fire simply shouldn't. "She is close," Tasso murmured, his gaze fixed on the strangely colored flames, his expression unreadable. "She knows you are listening." My breath came in shallow, panicked gasps. "What? What do I do?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Tasso didn't look at me. He only stared into the hypnotic, dancing blue flames, his face a mask in the eerie light. "You choose." I frowned, my mind reeling. Choose? Choose what? Finally, Tasso turned to meet my gaze. The unholy firelight flickered across his face, casting deep, dancing shadows that made his features seem alien, almost predatory. "You can turn away," he said, his voice low and steady, each word deliberate. "Leave this place. Go back to your world, and pretend you never saw her. Try to forget." A cold, hard knot settled in my stomach. Try to forget? How could I ever forget? And if I don't?" I asked, the words barely audible. Tasso's voice dropped even lower, a quiet rumble that vibrated through the small space. "Then you help her get what she wants." As if on cue, a sudden violent gust of wind slammed against the walls of the dwelling, rattling the wooden beams, making the hides on the walls ripple like disturbed water. And for the briefest, chilling moment, Sheriff, I swear I heard it. A whisper, faint and distant, like dry leaves skittering across barren ground. A woman's sigh, full of sorrow and an unquenchable rage. I closed my eyes, my mind a chaotic whirl of fear and a strange, burgeoning anger of my own. For the first time since I had woken in this strange man's home, a new, terrifying thought took root. I was no longer just a victim. And neither, I suspected, was the woman in the shadows. We were something else now, something connected. The wind howled outside like a tormented soul, Sheriff, rattling the very bones of Tasso's small dwelling. The blue flames in the fire pit still flickered and swayed, casting those unsettling, shifting shadows across the walls. I sat there, frozen, the choice Tasso had laid before me feeling heavier than a millstone around my neck. Walk away? Try to scrub the image of that spectral woman from my mind, the hollow eyes filled with an eternity of pain? Or help her. Help a ghost exact her bloody revenge. It sounded like madness, pure, unadulterated madness. But I'd seen her. I'd felt her. That wasn't madness. That was a terrifying new reality. My throat was dry as desert dust. "What? What happens if I say yes?" I finally managed to croak out. Tasso didn't move at first. He simply watched me, his dark eyes giving nothing away, as if he could see the war raging inside me. Then he crouched by the fire, stirring the embers with a carved stick. The blue flame seemed to respond to his touch, coiling and uncoiling like serpents. If you choose to help her, he said slowly, each word deliberate, you will no longer belong only to yourself, Julia. I frowned, a knot of apprehension tightening in my chest. What does that mean exactly? Tasso finally looked up from the fire, his gaze piercing, locking onto mine. Spirits do not ask for favors without taking something in return. There is always a price. A shiver, cold and sharp, ran down my spine. I thought of the woman, the way she had lunged, the silent, desperate scream that had frozen me in place. What does she want from me? I asked, the words almost a whisper. Tasso took a slow, deep breath, the sound audible in the tense silence. She wants your hands. My stomach twisted into a painful knot. My hands? The words felt thick and clumsy on my tongue. To do what she no longer can, Tasso said, his voice flat, devoid of any discernible emotion. To be her instrument. To bring justice. To make them suffer. The words settled in the air between us, heavy, cold, and unshakable. William. Sattler. The men who had betrayed me, who had left me to rot in the desert like so much worthless garbage. My hands curled into fists at the memory, my nails digging into my palms until it hurt. A hot, bitter rage, an emotion I'd suppressed for days, began to bubble up from the depths of my despair. She won't rest until it's done, I murmured, the words tasting like ash in my mouth, yet carrying a strange, dark conviction. Tasso nodded, his expression grim. And neither will you, Julia. Her unfinished business will become yours. The fire crackled loudly then, sending a spray of blue-tinged embers into the air. I closed my eyes. Could I really do this? Could I hunt them down, these men who had shown me no mercy? Could I become the agent of a vengeful spirit? A bitter, mirthless laugh threatened to rise in my throat. They had already decided I was dead. Then maybe, just maybe, it was time to prove them right, in a way they could never have imagined. I opened my eyes, a new, cold resolve hardening within me. I met Tasso's gaze. Tell me what I have to do. Tasso studied me for a long, silent moment, his dark eyes searching mine. Then, without a word, he reached to his side and pulled out that small, worn leather pouch again. He tossed it onto the dirt floor in front of me. I hesitated for only a heartbeat before picking it up. The leather was old, soft, worn smooth from years of use. When I loosened the drawstrings and peered inside, I saw the dark, powdery substance again. What is it? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Her blood, Tasso said, his voice as calm as if he were discussing the weather. My hands went stiff. I looked up at him, my stomach churning, a wave of nausea washing over me. Her... what? Mixed with ash, he continued, his tone unchanging. Ash ground from the bones of those who died in anger, their spirits unbound. You must carry it with you, always. It will guide her to you. It will strengthen her connection to you. I stared at the pouch, my pulse pounding in my ears like a war drum. The weight of it in my palm suddenly felt immense, a tangible link to the spectral woman and her insatiable thirst for vengeance. This is real, I whispered, the words an admission of a terrifying truth, a crossing of a threshold from which there would be no return. Tasso gave a single, solemn nod. It has always been real, Julia. You were just blind to it. A gust of wind, colder than any before, rattled the dwelling again, making the hides on the walls slap against the rough wooden frame. The blue fire dimmed for a moment, and in the flickering, uncertain light, I swore I saw her again, the woman, a fleeting shadow in the corner of the room, her hollow eyes fixed on me, watching, waiting. I took a shaky breath, my fingers closing tightly around the pouch. I had been left for dead once. I wouldn't make the mistake of being powerless again. The night stretched on, endless and oppressive, the darkness outside pressing against the small dwelling like a living, breathing entity. The fire had burned low again, the blue tinge fading to a more natural orange, but I no longer feared the shadows it cast. I could feel her now, Sheriff, the woman, not just as a flickering, terrifying figure at the edge of my vision, but as something deeper, something intertwined. A cold, persistent presence woven into the very fabric of my being, into my breath, into the weight of my thoughts, into the almost imperceptible tremor in my fingertips. I had accepted the pouch. I had accepted her. Tasso watched me carefully, his expression still unreadable in the dim, flickering light. "You feel her now," he said, his voice a low rumble. It wasn't a question. I nodded, my fingers instinctively curling around the leather pouch I'd tucked into the waistband of my tattered dress. The strange, powdery substance inside seemed to hum with a faint, cold energy against my skin. "What happens next?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. Tasso rose to his feet, moving with that silent, fluid grace of his to a wooden chest tucked into a corner of the dwelling. He lifted the heavy lid, retrieving a bundle of dark, oiled cloth. When he unwrapped it, I saw the dull glint of a blade, a knife, ancient and formidable, with a handle carved from bone, the metal itself blackened with age, and, I suspected, with things I didn't want to imagine. "You must return," he said, his voice low and resonant. "Return to the place where they left you, where your life was stolen." My breath hitched in my throat. The desert. The very spot where William and Sattler and the others had turned their backs on me. The place where I had tasted the bitterness of betrayal and the cold embrace of approaching death. The thought of going back there, of willingly stepping back into that nightmare, it made my stomach clench with a visceral fear. "Why?" I asked, though a cold, sickening dread in the pit of my stomach told me I already knew the answer. "To call her fully," Tasso said, his dark eyes boring into mine. "To complete the bond, to give her the strength to walk beside you, or perhaps within you." Within me? The word sent a fresh wave of terror through me. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my ragged breathing. I had spent days, weeks, trying to forget the feeling of the merciless sun scorching my skin, the suffocating taste of sand filling my throat, the insidious creep of death into my very bones. And now I had to go back. Willingly. I took a slow, deliberate breath, trying to gather what little courage I had left. And then Tasso placed the ancient knife into my hands. His grip was firm, his gaze unrelenting, as if sealing a pact. "Then, Julia Carter," he said, his voice a low growl, "you take what is owed." The sand quit breathing the moment the ash touched it. 1 second the dunes hissed under the wind, next they froze like they'd heard a gun cock. I muttered, "That shut you up, didn't it?" But my own voice echoed back too loud, like the world had been hollowed out. Something beneath me cracked, deep, bone-sick. I flinched, stumbled to my feet, knife up. The temperature nosedived hard enough to fog my breath. Every hair on my arms lifted, hunting for cover that wasn't there. From the split ground a whisper seeped, "Julia," drawn out like a bow across rusted strings. I backed a step. "I'm here. Come if you're comin'." The dirt heaved. Black dust poured upward, twisting into a shape, then into her. Not smoke now, but flesh so starved the skin clung to bone. Empty eye pits burned with moon-blue fire. She tilted her head, studying me like a wolf that's decided the trap looks tasty. Her mouth opened and a soundless moan spilled out. The air shook with it even though nothing hit my ears. I managed a rasp. "Remember me? The one who didn't stay dead." Her chin dipped. Recognition. Approval, maybe. Hard to tell with a face carved from grief. Wind found its breath again, only now it circled us, grit spinning in a hungry ring. She stepped forward. My instincts screamed run, but rage pinned my boots. She sniffed, slow, like a dog catching scent of buried meat. She spoke, voice no louder than a snake sliding over gravel. They must pay. Already swore it. I tightened grip on the knife. But we settle terms. I swing my own arm. She lifted a clawed finger, pressed it to my brow. Ice shot through my skull, and the world shattered into borrowed memories. Searing midday sun beating a woman in labor, alone in the dust. Men laughing while a wagon rolled away. Hands clawing sand, nails snapping, final breath stolen by crows. I jerked back, gagged, tasted bile. God Almighty. Her eyes blazed brighter. Satisfaction? Justice? Maybe just hunger. I spat in the sand. You show me pain, I'll show you reckoning. That's the bargain. She studied me a beat, then flicked her gaze to the knife. Metal glinted midnight black. My fingers cramped, wanting to give it over, but I held on. You get the blade when the job's done, I said. Not before. The laugh she gave was low, cracked, shorter than a heartbeat. Agreement sealed or warning, I'd find out soon enough. Night gulped the horizon. We stood at the wagon's skeleton, moonlight carving her outline clean. I gathered the strength to speak again. First name we take is Sattler. You remember his voice. Dead weight. Man's gutless. Her shoulders twitched, a breeze ripple, or was she nodding? I frowned. You got unfinished business, I get that. But I ain't losing the last scrap of myself doing it. Understand? Silence stretched. Then a single word scraped across my brain. Lead. A tight laugh left me. Lead it is. I sheathed the knife, turned away from the busted wagon. Sand shifted behind me, her footsteps matched my own. No crunch, no imprint. Still she walked, a shadow welded to my heels. The desert opened like a throat ready to swallow us both. Hooves hammered the hard pan, moonlight washing the desert in pale bone. Keep straight, I urged the horse, breath fogging in the cold. You drop me, we both end up Jackal Chow. A shimmer slid along my flank, her keeping pace without stirring dust. Can't spook a spirit, huh? No answer, just that glacial stare. Fine, but once Sattler's finished, you loosen the reins on my skull. We clear? Wind rushed like a sigh through mesquite, good as a yes. Miles later, the chalk cliffs surfaced, white slabs stabbing the sky. A skinny arroyo carved through them, Sattler's campfire glow flickering beyond. The horse snorted, smelling smoke and men. Easy, partner. One last push. I slid out of the saddle, crept the final yards on foot. She glided ahead, dress whispering like torn sailcloth. Behind a boulder, I counted silhouettes. 8 men, maybe 9, spread around wagons. Sattler's big frame hunched over a ledger, gold from the fire licking his greedy face. I flexed the knife. There you are, you moldy chunk of buzzard meat. Her chill wrapped my shoulders, as if to say, strike. Not yet, I hissed through teeth. Need a distraction. At that moment, a guard peeled off to relieve himself, wandering my way. Perfect. His knees buckled soft into the dirt, like the desert itself was swallowing him whole. One less sinner, maybe. One more grave no one would mark. She lingered, breathless and cold, behind my shoulder. Watching. Always watching. Happy? I muttered, flicking the blood from the blade. The whisper slid in like sand under a door. More, my jaw clenched. He didn't even scream. He would've, she rasped inside me, if you'd let him breathe longer. I stared at my hands, raw and red from the grip. Didn't feel like mine anymore. Just one, I said low, almost a prayer. Just Sattler. That's the deal. The air shifted, her shape blurring into shadow and wind. No answer. Never was. Just that hunger, coiled behind my ribs, patient as rot. I shoved the body under brush and stood, one down, blood spilled, and somehow I still felt colder than the dead man at my feet. I slipped into camp wearing the dead guard's duster and hat. Fire popped. Men passed a bottle, none looking twice. Sattler barked, "Hawk, that you?" I grunted low. "Yeah." "Patrol see anything?" "Desert's empty." I kept the hat brim low, heart banging. He grumbled, returned to scribbling. A crate of Henry rifles sat open at his boot, likely payment for some new devilry. Across the flames, 2 men argued over cards. One slammed his fist. "You're cheatin', Bent. Ain't my fault you play blind." Tempers flared. Fists flew. Perfect crack in their focus. I stepped behind Sattler, yanked his head back, steel under his chin. Bottle boys froze mid-swing. "What in holy—" Sattler's eyes bulged as he saw my face. "Julia? Miss me?" My voice shook with too many nights in the sand. "Stand up, boys. Hands where I can see 'em." 4 pistols clattered. 2 kept theirs. I twitched the knife. "Don't." Both thought better. Let iron drop. Sattler sputtered. "We left you with Mercy." "Mercy?" I forced a laugh. "Desert Mercy is buzzard stripping your eyelids first." She emerged beside me, blue flames dancing in her hollow gaze. Men gasped, crossing themselves. I pressed the blade. "Her name never made your ledgers, did it? Just another burden." The ghost's whisper filled the air like sandstorm hiss. "Take his breath." Sattler whimpered. "Please, Julia, think of the law." "Law?" I spat. "Law's asleep under this sky." One cardman lunged for a rifle. Cold wind exploded through the camp, lanterns snuffing. The spirit flared, driving him back screaming, frost blooming across his beard. I dragged Sattler to the fire's rim. "Look at her. Look good." He shook so hard his boots knocked ash. "I'm sorry." Too late. The knife arced. Heat of the blaze met spray of hot blood. Sparks hissed. Sattler collapsed, glassed eyes reflecting the woman he damned. The others bolted into darkness. A few shots barked wild, bullets whistled past, hit nothing living. She streaked after them, vengeful wind, shrieks echoing. Silence dropped quick. I stood over Sattler's corpse, chest heaving. Fire crackled, uncaring. The cold inside me eased, not gone, but hollowed out like a spent shell. She drifted back, edges fraying at dawn's first gray. For the first time, her eyes looked almost calm. "We done?" My voice was ash. A faint nod, then a single word in my skull. "Elias. Right. The boy." Sunrise painted blood gold. I cleaned the knife, holstered a Henry, gathered supplies. Sattler's account book smoldered. I kicked it into the flames where his grand plans curled to smoke. Before leaving, I whispered, "Tell the desert we're square." She hovered a heartbeat longer, then melted into the brightening air, sand lifting off a dune. For now, her hunger slept. I mounted the stolen horse, facing east where Tasso's Ridge waited, where a mute child and a flicker of new purpose warmed the ashes of my soul. Reins tightened, hooves turned. Behind me, the camp smoldered, an empty ledger of sins paid in full. Ahead lay miles of hard silence and maybe, just maybe, a sliver of peace. But out here, peace costs more than bullets, and I still carried plenty of both. A pale dawn bled over chalk cliffs when the camp appeared, tents slumped around a dying fire. 4 men, one of them Sattler by his hunched silhouette. My pulse rattled in my ears, her hunger throbbed louder. I dismounted, crept. She floated through canvas walls as if they were smoke. Inside, low snores. A bottle tipped over in the dirt. My whisper trembled. Wake 'em with steel or dread. Dread. The word chilled marrow. I slit the canvas, just enough. Slid inside, stood over Sattler. Scars across his cheek caught dawn's first pink ray. I pressed the knife to that scar. His eyes snapped open, saw me, then widened at the ghost behind, her face inches from his. He croaked, "Holy, Julia, that's—" I cut him off with a hiss. Dead weight, remember? He shook, tried to speak. Breath wheezed. The ghost's hands sank into his chest like smoke into cloth. His back arched, mouth opening wider, silent scream. I watched horror bloom in his gaze, visions she poured straight into his soul. Desert sun, vultures, abandonment. His terror filled the tent like stench. Feel it, I snarled. Every mile I crawled. Blood trickled from his nose, though no blade touched him. The ghost fed, eyes blazing. She leaned closer, whisper only he heard. He convulsed. I whispered, "Enough." She hesitated, reluctant. I put steel at his throat. "He's mine to finish." She withdrew. His chest collapsed, shuddering. I dragged him outside, dropped him in the dust. The other men bolted from tents, half-dressed, guns fumbling. Sattler begged, "Spare me, girl, please." "To spare means to forget," I said. "I never forget." Knife flashed, quick, quiet. His eyes emptied. Others raised rifles. Desert wind howled, sand blasting their faces. She roared through them, an invisible buffalo stampede. Guns fired wild, bullets whined past me. I rolled, shot two clean, third fled. Silence fell, broken only by the flapping calico scrap still tied to my belt, flag of a war I never wanted. I wiped the blade, spoke to the spirit beside me. One name left. Her voice, soft but firm, inside, William. "Then let's finish." High noon found William alone by a stony arroyo, trying to repair a wagon wheel. I dismounted 20 paces out. He looked up, recognition draining color from his face. He whispered, "Julia, it can't, can." My tone flat as desert slate. He grabbed a pistol, hand trembled. "Stay back." Ghost slid behind him, her presence raising gooseflesh on my arms even at that distance. He saw my eyes shift, spun, but saw nothing. Cold seeped through his spine anyway. I watched him shiver. "You left me to die," I said. "Why?" He sputtered excuses. Supply short, sickness, Sattler's orders, coward scripture. Tears streaked grime on his cheeks. She hissed wind through mesquite branches, mocking. I stalked closer. "You wrote my death in sand, William. Now feel the edge." He fell to knees. "Kill me quick." Ghost urged the blade forward, but memories of Elias flooded me. Small hand clutching mine, hope fragile. I halted. "Killing you's easier," I said. "Living with shame, that's hard." I flicked the pistol from his grasp, unloaded it, tossed water skins aside, slashed each so it bled out. Desert's judge now. I dropped the empty gun at his feet. Ghost shrieked inside, a hurricane trapped in a bottle. She tried seizing my wrist. I braced, shouted aloud, "No!" Wind stopped. She hovered, confusion swirling. I met her hollow gaze. "Your son is waiting for peace, not more blood." The blue fire in her eyes faltered. Pain, longing. She eased back, dissolving fraction by fraction until only faint shimmer remained. William sobbed, scuttling after leaking water, tears mixing with sand. I turned away, shoulders heavy but unbroken. Ghost's whisper trailed me, sorrowful, almost grateful. "We are done." I answered the empty sky. "Rest, sister." Knife slid home in its sheath. My boots carried me toward the horizon where a boy and a quiet warrior waited, and the wind, for once, felt like plain old wind. I gasped, staggering back as the horrifying visions faded, leaving me shaking uncontrollably, my breath ragged, my pulse roaring in my ears like a runaway train. I understood then, Sheriff, with a clarity that was both terrifying and liberating. This wasn't just about my revenge anymore. It never had been. She had suffered, just as I had, been betrayed, just as I had, been left to die, just as I had. And now, together, we would make it right. We would make them all pay. The wind picked up again, swirling around us, a vortex of sand and fury. But this time, it didn't feel empty or mournful. It felt charged, alive, full of a terrible, righteous purpose. I turned away from the broken wagon, from the shallow grave they had dug for me with their indifference. I had a new path now, a darker, bloodier path. And before the sun rose again, William Carter, Sattler, and all the other men who had condemned us to die, they would learn what it truly felt like to be left with nothing but terror and pain. They would learn about suffering. They would learn about us. It started soft as a snake sliding under the flap of a tent, Sheriff. Easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Problem is, out in that wasteland, my whole mind was cracked like dried mud, so I didn't trust a thing I saw anyway. One afternoon, the sky burned white, and I was following wagon tracks I knew were 3 days old. My throat felt like I'd eaten sandpaper for breakfast, but there was my canteen, sloshing full, cool as spring water. I froze. Water don't pour itself, girl. I said it out loud, like talking to coyotes. Nothing answered but the wind. No prints in the dust except mine. Still, a sharp laugh fluttered past my ear. Dry leaves over stone. Quit playing. I spun, half hoping I'd catch her shadow, only heat ripples dancing on the horizon. That night I blinked, and the sun flat out vanished. Stars everywhere, cold and pitiless, and a neat little fire crackled in front of me. Rabbit sizzling, skin crisping just right, peppered with sage, knife laid beside the spit, wiped clean. My guts growled, but fear sat on my chest like a mule. "Did you do this?" I asked. Voice barely more than smoke. Embers popped. The rabbit turned itself. I swear it did, slow and mocking. And she laughed again, closer, inside my skull this time, a rustle of silk over bone. "Fine," I muttered, tore off a haunch, chewed like a starving dog. "You keep me alive, I keep walking. That's the deal, huh?" Silence, but it felt like agreement. The gaps widened. One heartbeat I was stalking buzzards. Next I stood at the rim of a canyon I'd never seen, boots stained red. Sun jumped 4 hours while I blacked out. First couple times I reckoned exhaustion. After the 5th, I knew better. Morning came harsh and bright on the creek bed. My tongue stuck to my teeth. I lifted my hands, slick, brown, reeking metal. Blood, not rabbit blood. Too dark, too thick. The knife lay beside me, black blade wet and shining like an accusing eye. What did I do? My scream rattled up the dry ravine, slapped its own echo back at me. I scuttled away from the blade, palms scraping grit, belly turning sour. My knees turned jelly, dropped me in the dirt. I dug fingers into the sand till they bled, scrubbing, begging the stain to leave. It didn't. "Was that you or me?" I panted. "Answer me!" Nothing but sagebrush whisper. So I started arguing with empty air, sounding crazier than a saloon prophet. How long could a body stay sane talking to a ghost with no mouth? "Listen, lady, we wanted justice, you and me, not slaughter." A cool draft slithered over my ribs, impossible in that sun-baked ditch. Her answer slid into my mind, cold and slick. "They deserve it." "Who?" "All of them. You even care which man it is?" "All of them. Tenfold." Her words coiled tight around my lungs. I spat in the sand. "That makes us monsters." The breeze died. My own breath thundered in the stillness. A mirror-slick puddle shimmered under the ledge. I crawled to wash, but the reflection that rose to meet me, those were her eyes, hollow, starved, lit with endless hunger. I jerked back. Water rippled, face blurred, became mine again, sunburned, cracked, wild. "God help me," I whispered, but heaven felt a million miles away. I kept moving. Couldn't tell if I was chasing our quarry or fleeing myself. Vultures circled in pairs overhead, lazy and certain. Each step felt like walking the barrel of a rifle, never sure when the trigger would pull. One dusk I stumbled on fresh wagon ruts, Sattler's crew by the look. My pulse hammered, time twisted, blackness nipped my vision. "Not now," I begged. "Let me be awake when I find 'em." No answer. Always the same game. I tied rawhide around my wrists to feel the knots if she tried using my hands again. Fool's hope. Next blink, ropes hung loose, sliced clean. Blood spattered my shirt like rust petals. Cold satisfaction purred through my bones, hers. "You ain't turning me into your puppet," I growled, voice shaking. "Why fight what you already are?" She seeped through the cracks of my thoughts. "They left us to rot. We teach them rot." A tremor shook my spine. "Teach 'em, fine. But I swing the lesson. My will, not yours." Silence, heavy, skeptical. "Swear it," I demanded, fists clenched. "Swear you'll let me drive." Wind hissed across the plain, rattled dead grass. A fragile truce settled, thin as spider silk. Good enough. Night fell moonless. I built a fire small as a lantern flame, more for comfort than heat. Sat over it cross-legged, palms out, watching sparks drift. Memory came in jagged flashes. William's grin the morning he called me dead weight, Sattler nodding like judge and hangman. Was loyalty ever real, or just a story we tell round campfires? I asked the dark. A man's promise worth less than a cup of warm spit when the water runs low. The desert answered with coyotes yipping somewhere far. I pressed knuckles to my temples. What if I'm no better? What if I get my pound of flesh and still wake empty? Her presence stirred, softer this time, almost human grief. We carry emptiness either way. Choose which hole hurts less. I stared at the knife lying across my boots. The bone handle fit my palm like a memory I never lived. "Maybe justice ain't a clean ledger," I whispered. "Maybe it's just making the scales rattle enough they don't sleep easy in the dark." A low chuckle, my own, slipped free. "Reckon we'll find out soon." By dawn, we spotted smoke on the high ridge, Sattler's camp. My heart kicked hard. Breath felt like sucking gravel. Voices drifted, rough and careless, men who thought danger miles behind them. I crouched behind a boulder, watching them brew coffee, laugh at some crude joke. 15 yards, maybe 20, easy range. The spirit's hunger pressed against my ribs, urging, now. "Not yet," I hissed. "Need them to see my face first." Fear? Her whisper mocked. Or mercy? "Truth," I said. "They'll die knowing who came for 'em." I stepped into the open. Boots sank in soft sand, leather creaking like pistol cocks. Every head turned. One man squinted. "That? Ain't that Carter's wife? Thought she—" Another spat. "Ghost or no, draw iron." Pistols flashed. I dove, rolled behind a barrel. Bullets chewed wood, whined past my ear. Heat roared through my veins, mine and hers welded together. "Stay back," I warned inside my skull. "I aim this." Steel sang as I sprang up, shot first man through the collarbone. He dropped, screaming. Second swung his rifle. I sidestepped, slashed the tendon of his wrist. Blood sprayed, rifle clattered. Chaos bloomed. Something cold guided each strike, faster, surer than human reflex. I let it flow but kept the reins tight. 2 more men bled out in the dust before the rest ran, howling. Gunsmoke cleared. 3 bodies twitched at my feet. Their eyes, wide and empty, looked past me, maybe at her standing over my shoulder. "You feel satisfied?" I panted, chest heaving. "Not yet." I tasted bile. "It'll never be enough, will it?" Silence. Answer obvious. Footprints led away, William's distinct limp among them. I hefted the rifle. "We finish this on my terms," I said. "No more blackouts. No more waking in gore I don't recall." "And if I refuse?" "Then when he's done, I'll shove this blade in my own heart and drag you down with me." Wind whistled. The presence recoiled, anger, then grudging assent. Deal struck in blood and desperation. Hours later, I found him cowering under a rock ledge, pistol shaking, face gaunt, beard patchy, his whisper cracked. "Julia, that can't be real." "Real enough to bury you," I said, stepping closer. He raised the pistol. Hands trembled so bad the barrel wagged like a drunk pointer. I was scared. Didn't think you'd last a day. We had no food. Had enough for yourselves." My voice, icy flat. Sweat rolled down his filthy cheeks. "Please, you loved me once." "Did you love me when you called me dead weight?" I shoved the barrel aside, pressed my knife to his throat. "Did you love me when you walked off without water?" Tears leaked from his eyes, streaking the dust. "I was weak. I'm sorry." Sorry. The word rang hollow as a spent shell. The spirit surged, roaring for vengeance. End him. My arm twitched, edge dug into his skin. A single white line of blood beaded. But another memory rose, Elias's tiny hand gripping mine in the night, the quiet weight of his trust. I eased pressure. William sobbed relief. "You want justice?" I asked the ghost silently. "Justice means choosing, not just killing." Her fury coiled, cracked like a whip. But she listened. "To live with what you did, William, that's your sentence," I said aloud, stepping back. "Walk this desert same as I did, alone." He gaped. "You'll let me go?" "No, I'll let the desert decide." I emptied his water onto the sand, slid the bullets from his pistol, tossed them in the dust, handed him the empty gun. "If you make it out, maybe you earn mercy." I turned away. Her scream tore through my skull, rage, denial. She lunged, trying to wrench my arm, shove the knife between his ribs. I dug heels, fought her like wrestling a hurricane. "Enough!" Wind died, knife stilled inches from his heart. My hand shook, knuckles white. "You owed me blood," she hissed inside. "Paid in fear," I answered. "Sometimes that's worse." William crawled past me, stumbling into the wasteland, alive, but already half dead. I watched till he shrank to a dot, then to nothing. Dusk draped the sky in bruises. I stared at my stained hands. Didn't feel hers in my head anymore. Just weary quiet. "Is it over?" I whispered. No reply. Maybe she'd gone silent, maybe satisfied, maybe waiting. I slid the bone knife into its sheath, cinched it tight, turned toward Tasso's distant camp where Elias would be counting stars. Time to face whatever comes next, judge, jury, ghosts included. Because you can't outrun what you carry inside, Sheriff, but you can teach it who holds the reins. And tonight, for the first time since that wagon rolled away, I reckon the reins are in my hands. We found them, eventually. Sattler's sorry group. They hadn't gotten as far as they'd hoped. Misfortune, it seemed, had continued to dog their trail with a vengeance. Or maybe we brought the misfortune with us. A walking, breathing curse. I'm not going to tell you everything that happened, Sheriff. Not all the grim details. Some things are too dark to drag back into the light, too ugly to put into words. Let's just say, they paid. Every last one of them. Sattler, for his callous agreement to my husband's vile plan. The other men, the ones who'd stood by and watched, the ones who'd probably shared a cruel laugh about it later, around their fires. They all paid. She was relentless. A force of pure, undiluted fury. And I was her instrument, her hands, her blade. William was last. My William, my husband. I found him alone, hiding like a coward in a shallow cave, gaunt and broken himself, his eyes wide with a primal terror when he saw me emerge from the shadows. He thought I was a ghost. And maybe, Sheriff, in a way, I was. Or something far worse. Julia? He croaked, scrambling backwards, his face a mask of chalky disbelief and utter horror. But you're dead. We left you. Did you, William? I asked, and my voice, when it came, was eerily calm, preternaturally cold. It didn't even sound like my own. It sounded like hers. You seemed so sure of it back then, so certain. He started babbling then, the words tumbling out of him in a pathetic, incoherent stream. Excuses, apologies. He never meant for it to happen this way. He was desperate. He loved me, he claimed. Lies. All of it. A torrent of self-serving, cowardly lies. The woman inside me, she seethed. Her rage was a living thing, a venomous serpent coiling in my belly, demanding release. I raised the knife, its blackened blade catching the dim light. His eyes, wide and pleading, fixed on the steel. He begged then, Sheriff. Oh, how he begged. For his life. For mercy. The mercy he'd so readily denied me. And then, just as the cold fury inside me peaked, just as her will was about to become my action, something happened. A sound. A small sound, almost lost in the vast silence of the desert, nearly drowned out by William's pathetic whimpers. A tiny, almost inaudible whimper of a different kind. It wasn't William. It came from somewhere else. The whimper floated through the dying light, thin as spider silk, but sharp enough to slice my fury clean in two. Behind me, William bawled for mercy, voice cracking like rotten leather. I ignored him. That tiny cry had teeth. It yanked me across the camp before my boots even knew it. Canvas flapped in the evening wind, a shredded tent clinging to a ravine's edge. I shoved aside the fabric, knife ready. There, huddled in a patch of dust, sat a boy no bigger than a coyote, skin stretched tight over bones, clothes so ragged the desert could see straight through him. I crouched. Easy there, little sprout. Wide eyes. No sound now, only trembling. He looked at the knife first, then at my face, weighing which was crueler. I slid the blade behind my belt. Ain't here to carve you. My throat scraped. Been too long since I'd spoken soft. You thirsty? He blinked, almost a nod. My canteen hit my palm, half empty, but I tipped it anyway. Go on, for the dust drinks it. Tiny fingers wrapped the tin. He swallowed so fast water spilled down his neck. My heart did something strange. Hurt, maybe. You alone out here? Nothing. Just a little chest rising like a sparrow under a cat's paw. Can you talk? A faint shake of the head. That's all right. Quiet folk live longer. I glanced over my shoulder. William's sobs were distant now, carried off by the wind. Got no quarrel with you. What's your name? Silence. All right. We'll save the mighty secrets for later. I studied his face, dirty but familiar, like a ghost wearing new skin. Realization hit hard. Oh Lord, you're hers. The desert answered with a low moan. Cold rolled across my back. I felt the spirit settle just beyond the tent flap, watching. Her sorrow pushed through the canvas like winter through cracks. I whispered, He ain't part of the score, you hear? No reply, but the chill eased a notch. I turned to the boy. You hungry? Tiny nod. Got jerky in my pack, tougher in saddle hide, but it'll chew. I broke a strip, handed it over. He bit like a wolf pup, tearing, eyes never leaving mine. Been out here long? A shrug. Too damn long, looks like. I exhaled, sand rasping in my lungs. Well, kid, reckon you're coming with me. World's mean, but it's meaner to the small. He stiffened, glancing at the tent door. Fear of being dragged somewhere worse. I ain't William, I muttered. And I sure as hell ain't Sattler. A shadow moved outside, quiet as dusk. The spirit again, hovering, protective. I reached out slow. Come on, little one. Name's Julia. We'll figure the rest. He studied my hand like it might bite, then, so cautious it near broke my heart, placed his in mine. Skin cold, but pulse still there. Attaboy. I stood, guiding him outside. William's voice drifted weak over the scrub. "Julia, please," I barked. "Not word one more, or the coyotes finish early." His pleading shrank to whimpers. The boy flinched. I squeezed his fingers. "Noise ain't your burden." We found my horse tethered to a dead mesquite. I boosted him up, swung behind. The sun bled orange on the horizon. Under my breath. "Tasso won't love surprises, but he'll cope." The spirit drifted alongside, blue fire dimmer now, confused maybe, curious. I nudged the horse. "Hang on, kid. Wind's cold, but the stew's warm where we're going." He pressed close. I felt ribs like twigs against me, tiny heartbeat fluttering. For the first time since the wagon betrayal, something in my chest grew heavier and lighter all at once. Night packed itself tight by the time Tasso's fire glimmered in the arroyo. Sparks leapt into the dark like drunk fireflies. Tasso rose from the flames, eyes narrowing when he saw the extra bundle on the saddle. I swung down, boy still clutched. Found trouble. His gaze lingered on the child. So I see. He's quiet, hungry, and he's hers. The warrior's jaw flexed. He stepped forward, gentle as sunrise. "Come, little hawk. Fire won't bite." The boy hesitated, then slid into Tasso's arms like he'd done it before in dreams. Tasso knelt, wrapped a blanket around him. "What do we call you?" Just silence. "Tongues tied," I said. "Maybe cut." Tasso's eyes darkened. "Cruel world, Julia." I stared into the flames. Crueler men. Behind us, the spirit edged into the circle, half seen, half felt. Flames bent inward, blue at their cores. Tasso didn't flinch. She guards him. "Like a storm cloud guards lightning," I muttered. He ladled stew, handed the boy a cup. The kid sipped, eyes softening. I sank to the ground. Exhaustion weighed like lead, but my head buzzed. We got unfinished hell. Yet here I sit playing nursemaid. Tasso poked the fire. "Even wolves carry pups, Julia." I scowled. "Don't start with riddles." He met my glare. "You carry two spirits, your own and hers. One's ice, one's ember. Balance them or burn." I opened my mouth, closed it. Couldn't argue. Hours passed. Boy slept curled beside the coals, blanket up to his chin. Tasso smoked a twist of sage. I nursed coffee that tasted like regret. "Call him Elias," Tasso said softly. "Means the Lord is my breath. He needs breath more than most." I traced the rim of my tin cup. "Fine name. What now?" "William still bleeds out yonder. The desert will judge." "And Sattler?" "Paid." My jaw clenched. Not proud of how. Tasso's stare carried neither praise nor scorn. "Justice isn't tidy." The spirit flickered near Elias, watching him dream. Grief radiated off her like cold heat. I murmured toward the shadows. "He's safe. You have my word." A hush settled. Maybe she accepted. Maybe she planned. Hard to read the dead. Dawn's first light peeled the chill away. Elias woke, eyes wide but calmer. He pointed at the sky, V-shape of geese migrating. I squinted. Long flight for small wings. He mimicked flapping, then tapped his chest, then mine, then Tasso's. Together. I blinked moisture free. "Yeah, maybe we fly too." Tasso loaded packs. Sattler's crew scattered, but others will come. Word of spirits travels fast. "Let 'em." My hand brushed the knife. "I'm done hiding behind ghosts." Elias tugged my sleeve, shook his head hard. "What's that?" He pressed palm to his heart, then reached outward, gentle push. Tasso interpreted. "He says, let the hate go." I stared, throat thick. Smart kid. Elias offered a faint smile. First I'd seen. It cracked my armor like spring cracking ice. I breathed deep, looking to the spirit. You hear that? Your boy wants peace. She hovered at the fire's smoke, form wavering in sunrise gold. The blue in her eyes dulled, sadness draining out along with wrath. She drifted to Elias, brushed hair from his forehead with fingers made of mist. The boy's lids fluttered, but he didn't startle. I felt her voice inside me. No words, just release. Weight slid off my shoulders, leaving ache but also space for something warmer. We buried the pouch of blood ash at first light. Ashes to sand, rage to rest. Tasso spoke words in his tongue. I spoke none. My silence said enough. Elias held my hand through it, small grip steady. The spirit watched, then folded into the morning haze, rising like smoke, dissolving among pink clouds. I whispered, "Safe journey, sister." Wind answered soft, almost tender. Then it was only wind. Tasso handed me reins. Trail east to the river. Fresh start waits there, if you believe in such things. Not sure I do, I said. Elias tugged again, pointed east, nodded. I sighed. Guess the vote's 2 against 1. Tasso clasped my forearm. Past can't be uncut, Julia. But you can stop twisting the knife. I managed a half smile. Still gonna keep it sharp, friend. Sharp ain't the same as soaked. Fair point. I lifted Elias onto the saddle, swung up behind. He leaned back into me, trust as fragile as butterfly wings, but there. Last glance at the arroyo, ashes buried, ghost gone, warrior alone, but unbowed. I clicked my tongue. The horse trotted east. Sun climbed higher, spilling light across new miles. Voice inside asked, "What now?" I answered out loud, "We ride, we heal, and when the world whispers dead weight again, we prove it wrong." Elias looked back, brown eyes bright. He didn't speak, but he didn't have to. The road stretched ahead, rough, merciless, honest, and for the first time in too damn long, I rode toward it with more than a ghost for company. We lived with Tasso for a while after that, me and Elias. The ghost woman, she was still with me, but her presence had become fainter, like a fading photograph. Her rage had been sated, her revenge complete. William, Sattler, the others, they were gone. And with their deaths, her grip on my soul, on my very sanity, had loosened. She wasn't gone entirely, but she was quieter. More of a sorrowful whisper than a screaming demand. Elias began to heal in his own silent way. He still didn't speak, but he'd smile sometimes. A small, hesitant, breathtaking smile that would light up his whole face for a fleeting moment. He learned to trust me, to accept the food I prepared, the rough comfort I offered. And I learned what it meant to care for someone again, to protect someone fiercely, to put another's needs before my own, even before the dark whispers that still sometimes echoed in the lonely corners of my mind. But I couldn't stay hidden in Tasso's remote sanctuary forever, Sheriff. The things I'd done, the things we'd done, they weighed on me, a heavy, suffocating blanket. Tasso, he understood. He never judged me, not with words anyway. He just watched me with those knowing, sorrowful eyes. One evening, as we sat by the fire, Elias asleep beside me, Tasso spoke, his voice low. "The path you walk is your own, Julia. Its beginnings were chosen for you, by cruelty and betrayal. But you must choose its end. And so I chose. I chose to come here, to this town, to your office, to tell you, to tell everyone if they'll listen. So here I am, Sheriff Boone, sitting in this hard wooden chair in your office. The whole town's probably buzzing outside like a disturbed beehive, ain't they? Wondering what the wild woman who walked out of the desert, the woman some folks are already whispering is a witch, a demon touched by darkness, is doing closeted with the law. Let them wonder. They'll know soon enough." Or at least, they'll know my side of it. I've told you everything, Sheriff. As best as I can remember it anyway. About William's betrayal, cold and calculated. About being left for dead, a piece of human refuse in that God-forsaken wilderness. About Tasso, the strange, quiet man who saved my life, who showed me a different kind of spirit world. About the woman, the vengeful spirit, her pain, her rage, her insatiable need for retribution. About Elias, her boy, our boy now, in a strange, unspoken way. And about what I did. What we did. My hands. I look at them now, and they don't always feel like my own. They're stained, Sheriff. Stained with blood I sometimes don't even remember spilling, actions I only recall in hazy, nightmarish flashes. I know what I am now. I'm not the same Julia Carter who rode west with her husband, full of naive dreams and trusting love. That Julia, she died out there in the desert, Sheriff. She was murdered, as surely as if William had put a gun to her head. I'm something else now. Something harder. Something darker, for certain. But maybe, just maybe, something stronger too. Something that survived when it shouldn't have. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Sheriff, or anyone else's. I don't think I deserve it. I don't even know if I want it. But I want people to know the truth. My truth, anyway. I want them to know what happens when you push someone too far. When you strip away everything they hold dear. When you leave them for dead, without a shred of compassion or remorse. Sometimes they don't stay dead. And sometimes, Sheriff, sometimes they bring a piece of hell back with them. Elias, he's safe. Tasso will look after him. He's a good man, in his own way. He understands things most folks in this town wouldn't even begin to comprehend. As for me, well, I'm here. I'm ready to face whatever comes next. The judgment, the punishment, whatever it is. I'm just tired of running, tired of the ghosts. I finished speaking, my voice raspy, my throat aching. I looked you straight in the eyes, Sheriff Boone, trying to show you I wasn't hiding anything, not anymore. My expression, I reckon, was a mess of exhaustion, defiance, and maybe, just maybe, a strange kind of peace. You'd been listening the whole time, your weathered face unreadable, your gaze steady. You leaned back in your chair then, the old wood creaking in protest, and let out a long, slow breath. The sound was loud in the sudden quiet of the room. You looked at me, Sheriff, and there wasn't condemnation in your eyes. There was something else, something weary, something that looked a lot like understanding. You rubbed your temples, like you were trying to massage away a headache that had been building for years. Ma'am, Julia, you finally said, your voice gravelly, tired, but not unkind. That's quite a story. A hell of a story, no doubt about it. You paused, your gaze drifting out the dusty window for a moment, to the sun-baked street of this little frontier town, before coming back to rest on me. Another long silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. Then you sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to come from the very soles of your worn boots. Ma'am, you said, your voice low and thoughtful. Far as I see it, they sentenced you first.